hip hop,
Yeah,
hip hop, hip
bars is back.
hip hop,
Sam
hip
and
hop,
oh God,
hop.
what's
Hip
up with you? Hip hop uncensored is the vibe, so subscribe. Hip hop uncensored is the vibe, so subscribe. Oh God, driving Sam and riding passenger side, and you heard it out the mouth of the greatest rapper alive. Hip hop uncensored is the vibe, so subscribe. Hip hop uncensored is the vibe, so subscribe. Oh God, driving Sam and riding passenger side, and you heard it out the mouth of the greatest rapper alive. Go.
Attention, I seen the video you did. I'm not sure if it was on Instagram. What?
Bring your mic.
Okay. On Instagram, you were talking about Gunna, and you said that you were adamant about him not being a snitch.
Yeah.
And I kind of disagreed a little bit, even though I'm not saying, like, obviously I know he didn't really, obviously testify against, the YSL, but a few things that I did hear him say kind of made me think, like, okay, he's kind of going to be helping the prosecution. So I kind of wanted you just to kind of talk and give us some enlightenment, because I'm not an attorney. You've been practicing, way more than I do. So break that down if you can. Talk about the case and why don't you think that he is what they call a snitch?
Sure. So I did that video because I think it's important for us to dispel any rumors, especially because in our community, once someone is labeled a snitch, the ramifications for that could be life-threatening. And we need to be really clear. One of the things I think people don't realize is how often has any of you been in a courtroom when someone has taken a plea, right? So this is probably something that no one has witnessed before, especially a plea when there is a co-defendant. This is standard. And you guys know I used to be a prosecutor. I have cooperated defendants. I've had cooperating witnesses. But this is not that. Gunna took a plea, an Alfred plea, which is really not important so much for purposes of this discussion. But he took a plea, and part of your plea, you must do something called allocution. An allocution is when you admit to your guilt. That admission must be both legally and factually sufficient in order for your plea to be accepted by the court. And so the statements typically go, you and so were charged doing this fuck shit. Is that true? And typically the answer is yes, right? Because if you don't answer yes, you can't get that plea. Here's why Gunna's not a snitch. None of his statements can be used against anyone that's going to trial, right? His statements can't be used against Young Thug. Let's just talk about the Constitution. Mm-hmm. You have a Sixth Amendment right to confront the witnesses against you. They could never introduce a statement by Gunna during a plea against Young Thug at trial, because that would violate his constitutional right, right? Because I can't cross-examine a statement.
Right.
So you can't put in a statement without putting in the person. And Gunna hasn't signed up to be a cooperating witness. Typically, when someone is a cooperating witness and they take a plea, it's done in secret. It's done either in a closed courtroom or it's done in the back in chambers with the judge, so that no one knows that part of your plea involves a cooperation. So the fact that it was done in open court lets me know he's not a snitch, lets me know he's not a cooperating witness, right? And so we got to be careful about those things. He did what he needed to do to get out of the case, right? And that doesn't make him a snitch. That makes him a smart lawyer. I mean, that makes him a smart person who had a smart lawyer.
Let me ask you this, because we talked about it, about him being released, and then moments after, we shut the lights off here at the building, and then that video was leaked. And the next day, we immediately kind of attributed the leak to somebody wanting this to get out and the drama that's being now brought up to happen. Why do you think that video was leaked, in your professional opinion, and how easy is that type of thing to happen? Because you would think that type of information would be confidential unless released publicly, but that wasn't released publicly. That was leaked for a reason. So what's your thoughts on that?
In this day and age, there was a leak in the Supreme Court. There was a leak in the United States Supreme Court. So really nothing is safe. Nothing is private. Nothing surprises me when it comes to things like that. Why it was done, People do anything for clout, right?
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
do anything for clout. I don't know why people what people's motivations were, but it doesn't help or hurt Young Thug's case.
Now, what you saying that? Well, my kind of objection to that was, and let me know if I'm right or wrong, is even if they're not using it in court, potential jurors may still see this and they may still see that this is being painted. Like he admitted that this was a gang. Gunner, he admitted that they did violent acts. Now, potential jurors are still going to see this. They're watching Instagram. They're watching, the Shade Room. Can't they still be influenced even though they don't speak about it in court? Because now you got all these people taking plea deals saying, okay, this is a gang. It's a violent gang. Wouldn't his statement help that aspect as well, in your opinion?
Absolutely, there's the risk of that, obviously.
Okay.
However, when you become a juror on a trial, a judge is typically instructs all jurors that they are not to consider anything that is outside of the evidence that has come in at trial. So it would be a violation of any juror's oath, and that's why there are other jurors to check jurors, right? To make sure that you are not deliberating improperly, to make sure that you are not considering outside sources that have not been introduced during the course of this trial. And so jurors, they typically are a check on one another, right? But there's but so much you can do to ensure that every juror has never heard of this case and has no preconceived notions or ideas. But that's the job of the attorneys, right? That's what jury selection is about, is
Mhm.
to ask those probing questions and to find out who's on social media, who's following this person, who's following that, and whether or not those things will impact and inform your decision as a juror, right? And then you move appropriately. If that person you think is not going to be a fair juror because they may have been exposed to prior information about the case, then you make a motion to get them off.
Right. Now, in your opinion, do you think that these plea deals, Gunner, all the other guys, does this help or hurt Young Thug's case, in your opinion?
It depends, right? Because at
Okay.
this point, we know that people are pleading, but we do not know whether there are any cooperating witnesses. Right now, I don't know that. Now, I know they've had some success during the course of some of this pretrial hearing. They had some evidence suppressed,
Hmm.
which is good, but I don't know what's left. And sometimes prosecutors get desperate, right? They start losing evidence and they start to get desperate. But this is a highly publicized trial. They may start to try to flip whatever defendants are left in the case, right? I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse if you will testify on my case. So we'll see.
Right.
We'll see if that's happening or it's going to happen. Jury selection, I believe, is slated to start January 5th.
Hmm.
So we'll see who's left because I have an idea that there will be a mass exodus of defendants from this trial. And by the time we actually get to trial, there'll be a lot less defendants left.